Okay, I got a continuation of building a 35th anniversary Tuna Tin 2, but I also have an assortment of irons here, so I'm going to show you a little bit more about soldering irons. Just hopefully a little quickie, so I'm going to just set this aside for 1 second, and I'll show you. A lot of people start off with something like this. This is a Radio Shack iron. I just bought this brand new at the Radio Shack store a minute ago, or not a minute ago, yesterday, because I don't have one. I'm going to clean the tip on this thing, and then I'm going to show you why I don't have one. And as soon as I get some solder out, I'm going to... This is a 25 watt iron, and I'm going to try to catch this. You might not be able to see it. This has a very conical tip. It's set in with a you see the right there, the little Phillips head screw that holds it in. Not much to choose from in the way of tips, and the thing about this is if you look at it, if you try to actually tin it, and I've worked at this thing for 15 to 20 minutes now trying to tin it, and you see all it does is bead up, because the chrome plating on this soldering tip is preventing it from wetting the solder. Oops, I keep moving it out of the screen. So I have tried it, I have cleaned it, I have gone after it over and over and over again. It might become, but again, I have been very unsuccessful trying to use this iron for anything. So I generally stay away from that. Now that was maybe $10 at Radio Shack. I'll show you another one. This iron, again, it's very hard to see this because I can't put enough macro on my camera, and I can't put enough light on the iron. I'm going to try. This iron, it's a nice one. This is a Weller. I've had this iron for probably 30 years. And you can take a look now. You can actually see how silver, how shiny that looks down at the tip of the iron. And I'm going to solder. I'm going to actually put some tin on here. You see a lot of smoke. It's bubbling up, and I'm going to try cleaning it. This iron was accidentally left in for quite a long time, and what has happened is the tin plating on the tip has overheated and come off, and what you've got now is a lot of the iron underneath it coming to the surface, and when it comes up to heat, it forms iron oxide, and it's very, very hard to clean it. You got to get some materials. I have some tip cleaning sal ammoniac and some other paste stuff. I can't find them. I haven't used them in a long time. I haven't used this iron in a long time because generally I stay away from irons. I don't use irons anymore. And that's because soldering stations are all the rage. Now here's an iron. This is a Radio Shack butane fired little iron. Now I love this iron. It's like 20 bucks at Radio Shack. One of the best things they did. I'm going to turn it on. Turn it on and go about halfway. Sometimes it's a little hard to start. Yeah, I got butane coming out. Well, I give up. I don't have time to do that. Anyway, this little iron, It works really great, and I use it. I have it in my box all the time because I like to take it on the road when I'm going to a hamfest or something in case I don't have electricity. It does work pretty good. I've even built kits with it. I wouldn't use it all the time, but it's a handy dandy little iron. There's another one. Here's a Weller Porter saw. Not quite as nice. This one usually fires up a lot. Look at that, fired right up at the second click. You can see the red glow in the chamber. But the thing about this one is you don't have any choice of tips. This thing's got a very, very blunt, very blunt chisel tip on it. Not very effective for working on kit circuit boards and whatnot, but I mean it can be done. Again, use it for out in the field, but I certainly wouldn't use it around my bench. Another one. Here's one. Tip screws off, and if you look at the tip on this thing, you can see it's pretty shiny. It's got a nice chisel point, not chisel point, that's a conical point. Very silvery. The nice thing about this one is it's 12-volt operation. I use this guy all the time when I'm in a hamfest or whatnot because I'm at a usually I'm at a booth. I don't pay the $65 for electricity. I just bring a 35 amp hour battery and I can use this all weekend long without any problems. Very nice little iron. I've built lots of kits with it when I'm at a hamfest. Here is a let's see if I can move this camera up. I'll pick it up and actually come around to the front of this guy. This is a soldering iron soldering station. Nice thing about it is the fact that it has a temperature adjust. It's I think it's a 50-watt iron that's adjustable for whatever temperature you want. This one happens to be a Stahl, S-T-A-H-L, which has been a brand of soldering irons around for a long time. Again, nice thing about this one is it's got a pretty nice conical point. This one's been sitting around because I haven't, let me see if I can get this out of the background. I've had it on to heat. You can see I've got this iron pretty well tinned. Very nice. It's got a screw holder and the tips easily come out and you get all kinds of different tips for it. That's the important thing with an iron, is the fact that you want something where you can change the tips both when they wear out and depending upon what job you have. If you're soldering connectors or cables, you want a bigger tip, you want to deliver a lot of heat to it so you'll crank up the temperature. This right here, if you've seen any of my other videos, this is the current iron that I use. This is a slight, it's a conical tip with a slight flat on the end. This is I'll swing this camera around so you can see what it is. Right there, it's a Metcal. Very, very professional iron. I happen to get this at a nice deal. And this is I just cleaned the tip and it tins very nicely. I use it all the time now in my shop. So I'll come back to a kit in question. Here's a Tuna Tin 2. Here are my parts that I have for the kit. I've already got them all pre-sorted and ready to put on. So now I'm going to show you the technique. I'll just pick that's a 56 ohm resistor. I didn't even look at the board. I just picked up the part because I know it's pretty easy to find on this board. And it's marked right on the board, right there, 56. So I'll put this in, seat it down, I'm going to set the thing in the back. So now I can set that down And I'm going to try to pick a good spot where you can see the leads. You know, I guess maybe about there. Soldering technique: you should always make sure your tip is clean. If I have one part or 5 parts, it doesn't make any difference. I always clean the iron first. Add a very small dip of solder, and now that forms a little puddle at the end of the iron, and that puddle is what I'm going to use to put on both the part and the pad. You try to get that. I'm going to add just a little bit more. You try to get the iron. This is why you see me moving the board all around, because I want to get the iron so I can get the pad and the lead at the same time in that puddle. When I put it in the puddle, I just wait a second. Now I can add solder. And you notice I didn't add it to the iron, I added it to the pad or the lead, and when it immediately melted, so I know the heat flowed from the iron, it heated everything up, and it melted it. So again, I will add a little puddle, put it on the part and the lead, then I feed the part, not to the iron, but to the lead. And you know that the lead is hot when the solder melts on the lead, and it's connected. It's soldered. So you can cut these off. I put my finger over the tip. This is not a really good tripod, so I'm going to move my little brass set over one piece. Now I can turn it over. Now I'll pick another part. Again, pick any part. This happens to be, I can read it now, it's a 220. So that 220 ohm resistor goes over the emitter circuit. I've been playing around with Tuna Tin 2s for close to 20 years, so I know exactly where all the parts go. Okay, we get that guy. So again, let's see, we're in the, trying to move this so I got good camera view. Clean the tip, put a little dab of solder on the end so I can see. I get it right on that part and the lead. Wait a second, feed a little solder to the other side of the lead. It flows, it's soldered. And do it again. Now sometimes if you don't see a little puddle, you can put, you put it back. If you still see solder on the end of the iron, then you can do 3 or 4 parts without wicking all the solder off the end of your iron. So it really is a simple process, and once you get the hang of it, it's just practice. Okay, what do we got here? We got an 822, so that's an 8.2K, which is right here. I'll put that guy in. Spread the leads apart. And I'm going to try to get an angle. I'm looking in the camera to see where I got one part there that looks good. So I will clean my tip. I use the brass shavings because it just does a nice job. I don't use sponges or wet paper towels anymore. I got a little tip, a little dab on the end of the iron. I put it on the pad and the part. Wait a second. Feed the solder to the other side of the lead. And you know it's hot. You know it's ready to melt. And when you put it on there, you'll see the solder wick right in. And I'll do again on the other side. It only takes a couple of seconds to make that happen. Now I'll go after a few more parts just because I'll show you that we can do more than one. So I'm going to put down some 0.1 capacitors. We've got, as I said, I was in the way, my little leg was in the way, my 8 brass set, so I'm going to put that part in. I'll seat it. I can put the brass set back. Now it's on. Here's another 0.1 is over here. I'm off the screen here. I got another 0.1 right where this guy is. So I'm going to take that off for a second. Put that guy down. Put it back, and I got one more 0.1 over here. Okay, so I just put 4 capacitors on there. That one there's a little loose, so I'm just going to spread the leads a little bit. Just spreading them apart a little bit to make sure they stay put. Okay, so now clean the iron. Add a little dollop of solder on the end, and try not to hit the camera. So here we go. Put it down, wait about 5 seconds or so, add solder to the other side. Put it down, add solder to the other side. Put it down, add solder to the other side. Now I'm not adding solder to the iron. You don't want to put solder on the iron. You want to solder the lead and the pad. So you go after that pad and the lead on the other side of where you put the iron. And I'm going to swing this around here. I'm going to add a little bit more solder now because I don't see my iron doesn't have very much on the bottom. So, oops, now I can't even see that side, so I'm going to go this way. And one more. Sometimes you might have to add just a little bit of solder on the iron to the part to form what we call a solder bridge, so that the heat can flow off the iron into the part. If your iron is dry, if the tip is dry, then the heat won't flow over to the lead very well, and it won't go down to the pad. So you add just a tad of solder. I'll show you that on this next one. Let me cut these things off for a second, and I'll show you what I mean. The big thing you don't want to do is you don't want to keep feeding it more and more and more solder. You don't need very much solder. Just enough to get the job done. Okay, I'm going to pick here's a 0.82 microhenry choke. So 0.82 is up here. Okay, we got that set in here. Now what I'm going to show you, I'll show you what I mean about a dry iron. I'm going to take, by putting it into the shavings, I'm taking all the solder off the tip of the iron, so now it's dry. If I go over and hit this lead, there's not anything helping the heat come off the iron to the part, so I'm going to actually put a little bit of solder. And it's probably hard to see without a macro. Let me see if I can macro this thing. Let's see. I'm in video mode, so I don't know if that goes well or not. I'm going to fool around. I'm going to see if I can. Ooh, okay. Hey, look at that. Okay, let's see. Okay. I'm aiming right at this lead. So I'm going to dry the iron by taking all the solder off the tip. I'm going to go in, and because I've got a dry iron, I'm not going to have very good heat flow between the iron and that lead. So I'm going to go in and hit the iron and the lead, and you see it immediately flowed down to the pad and wicked on the pad. So that was it. Just a dab of solder. And that's all there is to it. The big thing I like to point out is a solder station. The nice thing about them is typically, here's that Radio Shack lead, and you can see that's just like a plated, chromy looking conical tip. Very, 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 very rotten soldering iron tip. Here's the Weller. This is a WP4CP. This has been around the block I've had this iron for probably, I'm going to see if I can clean it here. Again, I'll take the crud off of it. There's a fairly tinned tip right there. The thing about it is you got the knurled nut here so that you can change the tip to whatever you want. I like fairly sharp. Here's another one, typical. There's the knurled nut. There's a nice tip, nice and sharp. You can see a nice soldering. I'll see if I can clean that off and see if the dirt comes with it, but there's a fairly sharp tip. I like to use a tiny tip and get right in there, and if I crank up the heat a little bit, it will compensate for not having a lot of mass down on the iron. That's all there is to it. I give up. And if you send me questions about soldering, I'll see if I can address them at a later date.